The morning sun poured across Fort, its golden rays glinting off the polished rifles and gleaming helmets of the soldiers lined up for inspection. Carter stood at rigid attention, the familiar weight of her gear pressing against her shoulders. She had trained for this moment countless times, rehearsing the drills, the maneuvers, the exact timing of every action until it became instinct. Her boots were scuffed, her uniform perfectly neat, her eyes sharp and focused. Today's exercise wasn't just another drill. It was an opportunity, a chance to show that the countless hours spent running, shooting, strategizing, and learning were not wasted. But before she could gather her full confidence, a voice cut through the crisp morning air, thick with condescension and arrogance. "Are you sure you belong here, Carter?" Commander sneered, his tone dripping with mockery. His voice carried across the yard, amplified by the echo of the formation. Felt a twinge of irritation, but she forced herself to maintain perfect composure, the rigid posture of a soldier hiding the storm of emotions inside. Whispers fluttered through the ranks behind her. Some of the soldiers shifted uncomfortably. A few dared to glance her way, eyes wide with curiosity or doubt. Leaned slightly, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "I've seen rookies with more instinct and less experience," he added, loud enough for several others to hear. "Honestly, Carter, maybe this isn't the career for you. Maybe you should reconsider." His jaw tightened. She had been in this position before, the subtle undermining, the constant skepticism, the assumption that being a woman somehow made her less capable. But the intensity of derision in front of her peers stung sharper than any gunfire or grueling obstacle course ever had. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides, nails pressing into her palms, grounding herself. She refused to let him see her anger, refusing to give him the satisfaction. Inside, a fire ignited, burning hotter than the morning sun. Had trained relentlessly, sacrificing evenings, weekends, and holidays, pushing herself to the limit physically and mentally. She had run obstacle courses until her legs burned with lactic acid, perfected her marksmanship until a target the size of a playing card was just another routine shot, and memorized countless tactical maneuvers. And yet, here she stood, dismissed and belittled in front of the entire unit. The commander chuckled, perhaps sensing her inner turmoil, enjoying the discomfort he had caused, but did not flinch. Instead, she drew a deep, steadying breath, centering herself. Every muscle in her body coiled with restrained energy, every nerve ready to spring into action. She knew that words, no matter how cutting, could not define her skill or her worth. Her reputation would not be shaped by arrogance or prejudice. It would be shaped by results. Her peers, many of whom had quietly witnessed her training and known her capabilities, exchanged uneasy glances. Some felt a pang of sympathy. Others were genuinely curious to see if could rise above the mockery. Among them was Specialist, who had trained alongside for years. He knew her abilities intimately. If anyone could navigate the challenges ahead with precision and intelligence, it was her. He gave her a subtle nod, a silent gesture of support and confidence. Allowed herself a brief, private acknowledgement before returning her gaze to the commander, calm and resolute. The day's exercise was about to begin, a live-fire tactical simulation designed to test soldiers' speed, strategy, and accuracy under extreme pressure. It was widely regarded as one of the toughest drills on the base, a scenario in which only the best of the best could excel. For it was more than a test of skill. It was a proving ground, an opportunity to demonstrate that her dedication and training could not be dismissed by mere words. However, seemed oblivious to the determination burning within her. He barked orders, dismissive and overconfident, assigning roles and making snide remarks. "Carter, I hope you don't embarrass yourself, or the unit," he said, voice sharp, almost gleeful. "Try to keep up if you can." His mind, however, was already at work. As the other soldiers rushed toward their designated positions, she mentally mapped the terrain, the uneven ridges, the abandoned vehicles that could serve as cover, the shallow ravine that might offer a tactical advantage. Every possible route, every potential threat, and every opportunity for a strategic move flowed through her mind with clarity. while others followed conventional paths dictated by training manuals, considered unorthodox strategies, relying on instincts honed by hours of observation and practice. As the countdown to the simulation echoed across the field, felt her pulse steady, adrenaline mixing with focus. This was her arena. She did not need validation from, she only needed to trust in her preparation, her intelligence, and her reflexes. Every slight, every mocking comment, every doubt cast upon her fueled her resolve. She had something to prove, not to him, but to herself. The whistle blew, signaling the start of the simulation. Soldiers erupted into motion, rushing toward objectives, ducking behind cover, shouting instructions. Moved deliberately, every step calculated, every breath measured. While others reacted impulsively to chaos, she anticipated movements, predicted traps, and chose paths that gave her the upper hand. The commander's eyes followed her, narrowing, as she his expectations without a single misstep. His movements were a blend of precision, agility, and strategy. Her rifle was an extension of her body, her senses attuned to every sound, shadow, and movement. Even as explosions and simulated gunfire erupted around her, she remained composed, assessing, calculating, executing. She was no longer just a soldier under scrutiny. She was a force to be reckoned with. By the time the first obstacles appeared, a tangle of barbed wire, a narrow trench, and simulated enemy positions, was already ahead of her peers. She navigated each with a blend of skill and intuition that left onlookers momentarily stunned. The whispers in the ranks grew louder, a mixture of astonishment and admiration. Smirk faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. For the first time, he realized that his mockery might have underestimated her capabilities. And she felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of purpose. Today was not about proving wrong. Today was about proving herself right. Every ounce of effort, every moment of training, every late-night session of practice had led to this point. She would not merely participate in the simulation, she would dominate it. As she herself to advance toward the next stage of the exercise, Carter's mind was clear, her resolve unshakable. Whatever came next, whatever obstacles, enemies, or doubts, she would face it with skill, courage, and precision. The commander's laughter, once sharp and dismissive, was now a distant echo, had already begun her transformation from underestimated soldier to the deadliest force on the field. And the real challenge was just beginning. The blare of the base siren shattered the morning calm, signaling the start of the live-fire simulation. Soldiers scrambled, adrenaline surging through their veins as the sound of boots pounding against dirt and gravel echoed across the training yard. Carter remained poised, her gaze sweeping the field as she processed the terrain with rapid precision. Every hill, mound, and abandoned vehicle was catalogued in her mind, every shadow a potential threat. While others reacted impulsively to the sirens and shouted commands, his mind operated like a machine, calculating angles, distances, and timing with razor-sharp clarity. Commander, standing atop a small rise, barked orders with theatrical authority. "Move, move! Carter, try not to slow the unit down," he shouted, the sarcasm in his voice palpable. A ripple of unease passed through the soldiers. Most had learned to tune him out but allowed the words to fuel her focus. Mockery was now a tool, sharpening her instincts rather than diminishing her. The troops dashed forward in a conventional formation, predictable and exposed. In contrast, paused for a heartbeat, crouching behind a rusted tank and surveying the battlefield. She noticed something the others missed, a shallow ravine that cut diagonally across the field, providing cover and a clear path to flank the simulated enemy. The commander's orders might have dictated direct engagement, but's mind rejected the obvious, favoring ingenuity over adherence. "Stay alert," she muttered to herself, sliding forward in a low crawl, her rifle steady. Dust kicked up around her, mingling with the early morning sunlight to create a haze that hid her movements. The others surged ahead, shouting and firing in predictable bursts, unaware of the deadly efficiency was planning. Eyes tracked her, disbelief starting to edge the sneer from his face. His first obstacle appeared quickly, a mock enemy unit hidden behind sandbag barricades. While most soldiers reacted with rushed gunfire, she remained silent, measuring distance, calculating trajectory, and waiting for the perfect moment. When the enemy soldier raised his weapon to fire, his shot was precise, neutralizing him instantly. She didn't pause, her movements flowed seamlessly into the next phase. Whispers began to circulate among the troops. Did she just? She's ahead of everyone. The battlefield became a blur of controlled chaos. Explosions from simulated grenades rattled the ground, and the scent of gunpowder mixed with the morning air. Soldiers ducked and scattered, reacting with fear and instinct. However, was methodical. She advanced in bursts, combining stealth with lethal accuracy, her instincts honed by countless hours of training. Each movement was deliberate, calculated, and perfectly timed. As she approached the base of a small ridge, spotted another obstacle, a barricade meant to funnel soldiers into a choke point. Most of her peers rushed directly into it, falling for the obvious trap. However, identified a gap in the terrain, an unorthodox route that allowed her to bypass the danger entirely. She darted through, rolling over debris, and emerged behind the simulated enemy, unseen and unstoppable. Her peers froze as they realized she had vanished from the expected path. "Where did she go?" one soldier whispered, eyes wide in awe. Jaw tightened. The mockery he had wielded so freely was now laced with disbelief. Carter was not only surviving, she was dominating the exercise. He barked frantic orders, but even his commands felt sluggish compared to the speed and precision with which moved. She had become a force unto herself, a deadly presence moving with a predator's grace. Ahead, the terrain became more treacherous. Scattered debris, deep ditches, and high berms that required agility and strength. Approached each challenge methodically. She leapt across ditches with effortless precision, scaled berms without slowing, and used cover in ways that few others had anticipated. Her breathing remained calm, her focus unbroken, even as chaos erupted around her. The other soldiers shouted, some panicking, others desperately trying to keep up. However, was always one step ahead, reading every move before it happened. Her first major encounter with a group of simulated enemies was the ultimate test of timing and instinct. They spread out, attempting to ambush her as she approached a narrow corridor formed by 2 rows of abandoned vehicles. Froze for a heartbeat, assessing the distance, angles, and likely reactions. Then, in a seamless flow of movement, she dropped to one knee, fired 2 shots with deadly accuracy, and rolled to a new position, eliminating threats almost before they could react. The other soldiers stared in disbelief, jaws slackening. Didn't pause. The battlefield demanded constant motion and vigilance. She advanced with calculated risk, exploiting weaknesses and anticipating every simulated enemy maneuver. Barked instructions, frustration mounting, as he realized that his mocking assumptions were crumbling before his eyes. The soldiers who had once doubted now moved instinctively in her wake, inspired by her prowess. The whispers of admiration spread, mingling with the chaos, forming a chorus of awe that reached even the commander. Specialist, who had quietly followed progress, finally spoke up. "She's unstoppable," he muttered, his eyes following her fluid movements. Gave him a brief nod, acknowledging the silent support but remaining focused on the task ahead. She couldn't afford distraction. One misstep could ruin the carefully orchestrated flow she had created. As the simulation continued, reached a point where multiple enemies converged in a single zone. Most soldiers would panic or fire haphazardly. However, pause just long enough to analyze angles, anticipate trajectories, and determine the optimal sequence of attacks. She moved like a shadow, eliminating threats with controlled precision, advancing further into the exercise than any of her peers. Her reputation as the underdog, the one mocked and dismissed, was beginning to shift. Smirk had vanished entirely, replaced by tension and disbelief. He had mocked her only moments ago, confident in her failure. Now, watching her dominate the simulation with a level of skill that expectation, he was forced to confront reality. Carter was no longer a soldier to be underestimated. She was a strategist, a tactician, and a deadly force all in one. By the time the first hour of the simulation passed, had outmaneuvered the majority of the troops, eliminating key objectives, and positioning herself perfectly for the next phase. Her mind raced ahead, calculating contingencies, anticipating enemy responses, and preparing for the ultimate challenge that lay at the center of the battlefield. Every insult, every doubt, and every ounce of mockery had been transformed into fuel for her determination. And through it all remained calm. While the other soldiers fought chaos, she commanded it, bending it to her will. Each move brought her closer to proving, not to, but to herself, that skill, courage, and intelligence could overcome arrogance and doubt. The exercise was no longer merely a test, it was a stage on which would redefine what it meant to be a soldier. As the mid-morning sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the battlefield, prepared for the next phase of the exercise, the heart of the simulation where danger and opportunity intertwined. She inhaled deeply, centering herself, her mind a perfect balance of focus and instinct. Today, the mockery would end, and the truth of her skill would be undeniable. She was ready. The simulated battlefield stretched before like a living, breathing entity, each mound, trench, and vehicle presenting both obstacle and opportunity. She moved silently, her boots barely making a sound against the gravel, every muscle coiled with purpose. The other soldiers raced through the field, voices raised in panic or effort, but advanced with precision, her mind calculating every possible outcome before making a move. This was the moment she had trained for, not just to survive, but to dominate, to prove that skill and strategy always arrogance. Ahead, the first group of simulated enemies crouched behind barricades, scanning the field for movement. Most of her peers charged in, firing blindly and exposing themselves to danger. Paused behind a rusted Humvee, observing patterns of movement, analyzing the angles of attack, and calculating the exact timing necessary to neutralize threats efficiently. Her pulse remained steady, her focus unbroken. She knew one wrong step could ruin the entire simulation, but she had already outpaced the chaos. A single exhalation, a shift in weight, and rolled forward, rifle steady, taking the first enemy down silently before he could even raise his weapon. The movement was seamless, instinctive, almost artistic in its efficiency. She didn't hesitate. Each elimination opened the path further, clearing the way to the next objective. Soldiers nearby froze, eyes wide, realizing that she had bypassed the obvious paths, carving her own route through danger with a combination of tactical insight and deadly accuracy. Commander frustration was growing. He barked orders, waving arms and shouting for control, but the soldiers in his charge were reacting to movements, inspired despite themselves. She had become an unspoken leader, her precision and calm under fire creating a ripple effect among the ranks. Even those who had doubted her before now followed instinctively, mimicking her methods, learning from the example she set. Pride twisted into irritation. He had mocked her moments ago, and now she was rewriting the script entirely. Moved to a narrow corridor formed by two abandoned trucks, a perfect ambush point. The enemy had anticipated predictable behavior, but its instincts were sharper than any routine drill could teach. She dropped low, fired, and rolled to the side, neutralizing two enemies in rapid succession while remaining unseen by others. The field seemed to bend around her movements, every obstacle a challenge she met with unwavering confidence. The whispers among the soldiers grew. Admiration, disbelief, awe, all mingled in hushed tones as they watched her dismantle the simulation with unparalleled skill. She advanced further, calculating trajectories and anticipating enemy responses. A simulated sniper opened fire from a distant ridge, the shot slamming into the earth just inches from her feet. Without hesitation, pivoted behind a steel container, using the cover to gauge the sniper's position. Her response was precise, controlled, and deadly. Within moments, the threat was neutralized, and she continued forward, fluid as water and relentless as a storm. Every movement was deliberate, every action perfect, her focus unbreakable. Her peers struggled to keep up. Many had relied on raw speed, brute force, or routine drills, but combined intellect, agility, and timing in a way that none of them had seen before. Specialist, who had always believed in her, watched with a mixture of pride and astonishment. "She's untouchable," he whispered under his breath, eyes following her every move. Gave him a subtle nod, acknowledging his silent support without slowing down. She had no time for distractions. The simulation demanded perfection. Ahead, a tangle of barbed wire and debris created a natural choke point. Most soldiers hesitated, calculating the risk and following the standard approach. His mind worked differently. She scouted a narrow gap beneath the wire, just wide enough for her to crawl through. Without hesitation, she dropped low, sliding silently under the obstacle. The enemy's attention remained fixed on the conventional approach, leaving her free to advance undetected. The simulation, meant to test coordination and courage, became her stage for ingenuity. Each unconventional choice further distinguished her from the rest. Suddenly, a simulated grenade detonated nearby, showering dirt and shrapnel around her. Soldiers around her panicked, shouting, retreating, or firing wildly. His breath remained steady. She rolled to cover, using the explosion as a diversion to reposition herself strategically. Within seconds, she assessed the positions of enemies, identified weak points, and advanced with controlled precision. Every move was deliberate, every step calculated. Where others saw chaos, she saw opportunity, turning danger into advantage. As approached a narrow bridge over a shallow ravine, multiple simulated enemies emerged, attempting to flank her. Most soldiers would have frozen, trapped by fear and indecision. Paused for only a heartbeat, calculating distances, angles, and timing. Then she moved like lightning, darting to the left, taking one target down with a single shot, spinning and neutralizing another before he could fire. The third enemy barely had time to react before she pivoted, her movements fluid, deadly, and almost impossible to follow. By now, whispers of admiration had reached Commander. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by a growing tension he could neither mask nor control. Had taken control of the field with precision, intelligence, and courage, executing maneuvers he had never anticipated. Her presence commanded attention not through rank or authority, but through sheer skill. The other soldiers, inspired and awed, instinctively adjusted their movements, following her lead in ways they hadn't known were possible. Strategy was flawless. She had transformed the battlefield into a canvas, each action a brushstroke of mastery. Obstacles that had stymied her peers became tools in her hands. Enemies fell in succession, each neutralized with a combination of timing, intellect, and instinct. By the time she reached the central zone of the simulation, the soldiers around her had shifted from skepticism to respect, realizing that the one they had mocked moments ago was now the undeniable force driving their progress. And yet Sm's mind was already moving forward. She was aware that the true challenge had yet to come, the simulation's most dangerous section, designed to test courage, precision, and leadership under pressure. Every obstacle cleared, every enemy neutralized had brought her closer to that final test. Her pulse remained steady, her focus absolute. She didn't just aim to survive, she aimed to dominate, to prove that skill, intelligence, and determination could overcome mockery, doubt, and expectation. As the simulation's mid-phase approached, paused for a heartbeat, scanning the field ahead. Shadows shifted, enemy patterns emerged, and the terrain changed with each passing second. She adjusted her strategy silently, calculating the perfect route, the optimal timing, and the most effective sequence of actions. The exercise was no longer merely a test, it was a proving ground. Carter, once mocked, was about to show what it truly meant to be the deadliest soldier on the field. The battlefield seemed to shift as Carter approached the heart of the simulation, the zone known among soldiers as the Gauntlet. It was designed to test every skill she had honed: speed, strategy, reflexes, and nerves. Here, obstacles, narrow trenches, scattered debris, simulated enemies in hidden positions, and smoke screens meant to disorient and intimidate. Most soldiers entering this section stumbled, panic evident in their movements. However, felt a surge of focus unlike anything she had experienced. Every insult, Every whisper of doubt from Commander fueled her resolve. She was ready to turn the tide. Ahead, a cluster of simulated enemies emerged, attempting a coordinated ambush. Most soldiers reacted with instinctive panic, firing without aim or strategy, creating chaos that left them exposed. Crouched behind a rusted vehicle, assessing the enemy's positions. Her eyes flicked from target to target, calculating distances, angles, and timing. Within moments, she was moving, darting from cover to cover, firing with deadly precision. 2 enemies fell before the third could even register her presence. Her movements were fluid, almost artistic, as she weaved through danger with unerring accuracy. The first explosion from a simulated grenade erupted near a barricade, sending dirt and debris into the air. Soldiers screamed, scrambling for cover. Remained calm, her mind analyzing the new variables. She used the smoke and chaos to her advantage, repositioning to a better vantage point while simultaneously observing enemy patterns. Where others panicked, she thrived. Her mental map of the battlefield allowed her to anticipate ambushes and set herself up for decisive action. Every decision, every movement was calculated with precision. Observing from the control tower, felt a flicker of disbelief. He had mocked her earlier, certain she would falter under pressure. Now, watching her navigate the most dangerous section of the simulation with poise and deadly efficiency, he could see that he had underestimated her completely. For the first time, he felt a tension he hadn't expected, was rewriting the rules in real time, and no amount of authority could counter her skill. Approached a narrow bridge spanning a shallow ravine, the perfect funnel for a trap. 3 simulated enemies lay in wait, anticipating conventional movement. Most soldiers would hesitate, constrained by training and fear. However, saw an alternative route, a low crawl along the edge hidden by shadows. She moved silently, her rifle trained on targets as she navigated the gap. One enemy turned, sensing movement, but reflexes were faster. A single, precise shot neutralized him before he could react. She continued forward, eliminating the second and third enemies in rapid succession. Around her, the battlefield erupted with confusion. Soldiers shouted, some retreating, some frozen in indecision. Teammates began instinctively adjusting their movements, inspired by her actions even as they struggled to keep pace. The whispers of awe spread. Soldiers who had doubted her skill now recognized the precision and courage that set her apart. Didn't acknowledge the attention. She remained focused on the task at hand, aware that the simulation's most dangerous challenges still awaited. A steep berm appeared, covered in debris and unstable soil. Simulated enemy fire rained down, forcing most soldiers to freeze. Assessed the slope, calculating traction, angle, and potential enemy positions at the top. She sprinted, launching herself upward with controlled power, rolling into cover as she reached the crest. Her precision and timing allowed her to neutralize an enemy attempting to flank her from behind. By the time the other soldiers reached the same berm, she had already cleared multiple objectives, positioning herself advantageously for the next challenge. The simulation intensified as reached a series of narrow trenches and scattered obstacles, each presenting new hazards. Smoke bombs obscured vision, loud sirens disoriented the senses, and hidden enemies struck with deadly efficiency. Focus was absolute. She moved with fluid precision, anticipating each threat, adapting instantaneously, and executing maneuvers that left her peers struggling to comprehend her tactics. Her mind and body were in perfect harmony, a lethal combination of agility, instinct, and intelligence. Voice cracked over the loudspeakers, shouting directions in an attempt to regain control. "Carter, stick to protocol." His tone carried authority, frustration, and disbelief, but ignored him entirely. Protocols were irrelevant when strategy, skill, and intuition dictated a superior approach. Every move she made expectation, dismantling the simulation's obstacles with efficiency and cunning. She was no longer merely a participant, she was the force defining the outcome. A simulated sniper perched atop a ridge fired a warning shot, the bullet striking mere inches from shoulder. Her reaction was instantaneous. She dropped low, rolled into cover, and fired a controlled volley, neutralizing the threat. Within moments, she had repositioned, eyes scanning for additional danger while calculating the fastest route to the simulation's central objective. Every enemy she eliminated shifted momentum further in her favor. Her teammates, inspired and awed, began following her example, adjusting tactics instinctively. Decisive maneuvers culminated at the heart of the gauntlet, an open courtyard surrounded by elevated positions, perfect for ambushes. Most soldiers approached cautiously, hesitant to risk exposure. However, advanced methodically, analyzing patterns and calculating probabilities. Each step was deliberate, each decision measured. She eliminated enemies with lethal precision, using cover effectively and moving unpredictably to outflank opponents. The other soldiers watched in astonishment as she executed maneuvers that combined strategy, speed, and instinct flawlessly. By now, it was clear that the tide of the simulation had shifted entirely. Carter, once mocked and underestimated, had become the dominant force on the field. The commander's smug arrogance had vanished, replaced by awe, tension, and grudging respect. Her peers, inspired by her skill and decisiveness, moved with renewed confidence, recognizing the truth. His mastery of the battlefield was unmatched. As the smoke cleared and the simulated enemies fell, paused, scanning the battlefield. Every obstacle had been overcome, every ambush neutralized, and every challenge met with skill and courage. Her body burned with exertion, but her mind remained sharp, already anticipating the next phase of the exercise. The turning point had been reached. She had transformed from the mocked underdog into the deadliest soldier on the field, commanding respect through precision, intelligence, and sheer determination. And yet knew the ultimate challenge awaited, the final stage of the simulation, where the true test of courage, skill, and leadership would occur. She inhaled deeply, centering herself, fully aware that one final push would solidify her triumph. The mockery of the morning had been silenced. Now, the battlefield awaited the soldier who had proven herself unstoppable. Carter paused at the edge of the central zone, her heart steady despite the chaos around her. The simulated battlefield stretched like a maze of danger, littered with obstacles, smoke, and enemy positions carefully designed to test even the most skilled soldiers. The other participants hesitated, unsure how to proceed, but had already visualized the path forward. Her eyes flicked across the terrain, identifying every point of vulnerability in the enemy's setup. Where others saw obstacles, she saw opportunity. Where others panicked, she saw the chance to assert control and redefine the simulation entirely. A cluster of simulated enemies lay in wait behind overturned vehicles and sandbags. Most soldiers would charge recklessly, exposing themselves to danger, but calculated the angles of approach, identifying blind spots and weak positions. She moved low and fast, sliding into cover behind a rusted Humvee, rifle ready. A single, controlled burst neutralized the first enemy, followed instantly by a second as she pivoted without hesitation. The other soldiers froze, awe and disbelief etched on their faces. She was unstoppable. His movements were both fluid and precise, a dance of calculated aggression. Every step had purpose, every action executed with the knowledge of countless hours of training. She advanced through the zone, each obstacle met with ingenuity, crawling under barbed wire, leaping over debris, and using the terrain to her advantage. The battlefield seemed to respond to her presence, chaos bending around her methodical strategy. She was no longer reacting to the simulation, she was controlling it. The commander, watching from a distance, felt his confidence waver. He had mocked her earlier, certain she would fail. Now he saw a soldier operating on a level he hadn't anticipated. His every movement expectation, dismantling the simulation with unmatched skill. The other soldiers, inspired by her example, instinctively adapted their tactics, moving more efficiently and with greater confidence, as though she were leading them silently. Arrogance faltered under the weight of her performance. Ahead, a narrow bridge over a shallow ravine presented the perfect funnel for an ambush. 3 simulated enemies lay in wait, anticipating predictable behavior. Most soldiers would have faltered, trapped by fear and caution. However, had already plotted her approach. She crouched low, slipped along the bridge's edge, and eliminated the first enemy with a precise shot. The second fell as she rolled behind cover, and the third was neutralized with a controlled burst before he could raise his weapon. Her timing and skill left no room for error, and the battlefield yielded to her dominance. A sudden explosion rocked the field, a simulated grenade thrown by an enemy attempting to halt her progress. Debris and dust filled the air, forcing soldiers into chaotic retreat. Used the disruption to her advantage, moving invisibly through smoke and shadows, neutralizing threats as they emerged. Each decision was deliberate, executed with efficiency, and designed to maintain momentum. The other soldiers struggled to adapt, while advanced steadily, unstoppable and unflinching. The simulation now demanded more than mere survival. It required leadership. Moved past the obstacles, identifying teammates who were trapped or struggling. She coordinated subtle cues, guiding them toward safety and better positioning without a word. Her presence inspired confidence. Soldiers instinctively mirrored her movements, trusting her judgment. Dominance wasn't born solely from physical skill. It was rooted in strategy, intelligence, and the quiet authority of someone who commanded respect through action. From the side, Specialist observed, awe evident in his eyes. "She's incredible," he whispered to a fellow soldier. Gave him a brief nod, acknowledging the silent support but keeping her focus on the mission. She knew the final phase of the simulation was imminent, the point where skill, courage, and leadership would converge. Every move she had made up to now had been preparation, each obstacle a stepping stone toward this ultimate challenge. The simulated sniper fire grew more frequent, another attempt to slow her momentum. Instincts were impeccable. She pivoted between cover, calculated trajectories, and eliminated threats with surgical precision. Where others panicked or hesitated, she anticipated enemy actions before they occurred. Her body was in perfect harmony with her mind, each movement deliberate, efficient, and deadly. By the time she reached the central courtyard, the most dangerous area of the simulation, had cleared the path, positioning herself for decisive action. Frustration mounted as he barked orders, attempting to regain control. "Carter, stick to protocol." His voice carried urgency, disbelief, and anger, ignored him entirely. Protocols were irrelevant when intelligence, strategy, and instinct dictated superior choices. Every decision she made dismantled the obstacles set before her. She was no longer just a soldier participating in the simulation. She was defining it, shaping the battlefield with every precise movement. The courtyard presented multiple enemies, elevated positions, and limited cover. Most soldiers hesitated, fearful of exposure, but assessed angles, distances, and cover points in seconds. She advanced, firing with controlled accuracy, neutralizing threats systematically. Each maneuver showcased her mastery of timing and strategy. Her presence commanded attention, inspiring awe and respect among her peers. For the first time, many realized that the soldier they had once mocked was now the unit's most formidable force. Breakthrough became evident as she eliminated the last cluster of simulated enemies blocking the central objective. The zone fell silent, the other soldiers staring in disbelief. Her efficiency, precision, and composure under pressure had transformed the simulation from chaos into controlled dominance. Arrogance had vanished entirely. He watched, unable to deny what he had underestimated. Carter, once the target of ridicule, had proven herself not just capable, but exceptional. Her body burned with exertion, yet her mind remained razor-sharp. She had overcome every challenge, anticipated every ambush, and led her peers through the chaos without a word. The breakthrough was complete, the moment where mockery, doubt, and underestimation gave way to undeniable mastery. Had moved from surviving the simulation to commanding it, reshaping perceptions and inspiring those around her. As she paused to survey the battlefield, felt a surge of quiet satisfaction. The breakthrough was not just about personal achievement. It was about proving that skill, courage, and determination could overcome doubt and ridicule. The final phase awaited, and she was ready. The deadliest part of the simulation was yet to come, but Carter had already shown that she was a force to be reckoned with. The tide had turned, and nothing would stop her now. Carter crouched behind the remnants of a shattered vehicle, her breathing steady, eyes scanning the battlefield. The central courtyard lay before her like a gauntlet, littered with obstacles, cover points, and enemies hidden in shadows. This was the final phase of the simulation, the point where skill, courage, and strategy would be tested to their absolute limits. Her pulse was steady, her focus sharp. The mocking words of Commander from earlier that morning now served as fuel. She was determined not only to succeed, but to dominate, to prove that nothing could undermine her skill and courage. The simulated enemies emerged, a coordinated ambush designed to trap soldiers in the open. Most of his peers froze, their confidence eroded by the chaos around them. However, remained calm. She analyzed the enemy positions in seconds, noting angles of fire, cover points, and possible escape routes. Her mind mapped the battlefield like a chessboard. Every move, every counter, every potential threat was accounted for. While others reacted with panic and hesitation, acted with precision, turning what could have been deadly confusion into controlled advantage. The first enemy advanced toward her position, weapon raised, rolled to cover, aimed, and fired with flawless accuracy. He fell before he could even react. Another enemy appeared from a different angle, attempting to flank her, but anticipated the move. With a swift pivot and controlled burst of fire, she neutralized him as well. Her efficiency was unmatched. Every action was deliberate, every movement calculated. The battlefield was no longer chaotic, it moved according to her will. Around her, the other soldiers struggled to adapt. Some panicked, some froze, and a few tried to mimic her movements without understanding the precision and timing required. His presence had shifted the dynamic entirely. She had become the focal point, the force dictating the pace and outcome of the simulation. Even Commander, observing from the control tower, could not deny the skill and efficiency she displayed. The arrogance and mockery of the morning had been replaced with tension, awe, and grudging respect. Moved toward the center of the courtyard, the most exposed part of the battlefield. A simulated sniper perched atop a ridge fired, the shot grazing the concrete just inches from her. She dropped low, rolled into cover, and assessed the situation. Calculating angles and timing, she eliminated the sniper with a single, precise shot. Her movement was fluid, almost instinctual, a blend of strategy, reflex, and experience. The other soldiers watched in disbelief as she cleared the open zone without hesitation, neutralizing threats that had been considered impossible to face head-on. The smoke from simulated grenades and explosions filled the air, disorienting most of the participants. Used it to her advantage, advancing through the haze with silent precision. She identified teammates who were trapped or pinned down, signaling them subtly to move into safer positions. Her influence extended beyond her own actions. She inspired those around her, even without speaking, demonstrating leadership through effectiveness. Soldiers who had doubted her at the start now looked to her instinctively, following her example. As she approached the final barricade, multiple enemies attempted to converge on her position. Most soldiers would have been overwhelmed, however, had already mapped escape routes and predicted their tactics. She moved with a combination of speed, agility, and precision. Each enemy that emerged fell in a controlled sequence, eliminated before they could pose a real threat. The chaos of the ambush became a stage for her skill. Every shot, every movement, every decision reinforced the reputation she had earned in the previous phases of the simulation. Her mind calculated contingencies even as her body executed flawless maneuvers. She ducked behind cover, rolled to a new position, and fired in quick succession, neutralizing the last wave of simulated enemies attempting to stop her advance. By the time the smoke cleared and the dust settled, had conquered the courtyard with surgical efficiency. The final test, designed to push every soldier to the brink, had been completed, and she had not only survived but dominated. Commander, now forced to watch from the observation tower, clenched his fists. He had underestimated her at every step, and the consequences were undeniable. Carter had transformed from the mocked underdog into the deadliest soldier on the field. Her peers, inspired and awed, gathered around her, many still panting from exertion, some unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. She had led by example, displaying a combination of skill, courage, and intelligence that no one could deny. Took a brief moment to breathe, surveying the battlefield. Every threat had been neutralized, every obstacle overcome. Her body was exhausted, her muscles burning, but her mind remained clear. She had executed a flawless combination of strategy, timing, and reflexes, demonstrating mastery in every aspect of the simulation. Her achievement was not just personal, it had reshaped the perceptions of everyone on the field. The whispers of admiration and astonishment spread through the soldiers. "She's incredible," one muttered. "I've never seen anyone move like that," another added. Even the most skeptical soldiers were compelled to acknowledge her dominance. Performance had not only neutralized the final threat but had inspired those around her to see what true mastery looked like. Stepped forward reluctantly, his voice tight. "Carter, you've exceeded every expectation," he admitted begrudgingly, his tone stripped of sarcasm. Remained composed, offering a subtle nod in acknowledgement. Validation from the commander was no longer necessary. She had proven her skills beyond any doubt to herself and to everyone who had ever questioned her. Her peers began to gather around, offering quiet congratulations, expressions of awe and gestures of respect. Allowed herself a small, private smile. She had taken mockery, doubt, and underestimation and transformed them into fuel, achieving not only personal victory but a demonstration of skill, strategy, and leadership that would be remembered by the unit for years to come. As the dust settled and the simulation concluded, reflected briefly on the journey. From the mocking words of Commander to the chaos of the gauntlet, she had faced every challenge with precision, intelligence, and courage. The final test had been the culmination of years of training, preparation, and resilience. She had not just survived, it had become a defining moment, a testament to her capabilities as a soldier and as a leader. Carter had proven herself unstoppable. The deadliest soldier on the field, she had turned mockery into mastery, doubt into dominance, and fear into respect. The final test was complete, and she had emerged victorious, leaving an indelible mark on the battlefield and on everyone who had witnessed her transformation. The dust of the simulation settled, and a strange calm fell over the battlefield. Soldiers stood scattered across the courtyard, many still catching their breath, others frozen in disbelief at what they had witnessed. Carter, chest heaving from exertion, lowered her rifle and surveyed the scene. The mockery and doubt that had followed her that morning were gone, replaced by a palpable respect that radiated from every corner of the unit. Her peers, many of whom had once whispered skepticism about her abilities, now regarded her with awe and admiration. Specialist was the first to break the stunned silence. He approached her cautiously, eyes wide with a mixture of amazement and respect. "That was incredible," he said, his voice almost reverent. "I've trained alongside you for years, but I've never seen anyone move with that kind of precision and control. You didn't just complete the simulation, you dominated it." Gave him a faint, appreciative nod, still breathing steadily, her mind replaying every precise movement, every calculated decision that had led to this moment. Other soldiers began to approach, their expressions a mix of admiration, respect, and disbelief. Many offered quiet congratulations, some simply shaking their heads in wonder. It was clear that performance had shifted the dynamics of the unit. Where doubt had once clouded judgment, clarity and respect now prevailed. For the first time, her peers truly understood the depth of her skill, the intelligence behind her movements, and the courage it took to execute every action flawlessly under extreme pressure. Commander descended from the observation tower, his expression unreadable. He had spent the morning mocking her, certain she would falter, confident that her underestimation would be validated. But now, standing before her, the arrogance was gone, replaced by a begrudging respect he had not anticipated. Every step she had taken, Every threat she had neutralized had dismantled the assumptions he had held. Pride demanded acknowledgement, and though his voice was measured, it carried weight. "Carter," he began, clearing his throat. "I misjudged you." He paused, the words heavy with reluctance. "Today, you've demonstrated a level of skill, precision, and leadership that surpasses every expectation. You didn't just complete the simulation, you controlled it. You turned what was meant to test us into a lesson on strategy, courage, and execution. Well done." Met his gaze steadily, her posture calm but confident. She didn't seek approval from her performance had proven her capability, but she accepted his acknowledgement with quiet dignity. "Thank you, sir," she said simply, letting her actions speak louder than words. The tension that had existed between them for months, the skepticism, the mockery, was finally replaced by recognition of skill and competence. The soldiers around her murmured among themselves, still processing what they had witnessed. "She's untouchable," one whispered. "I can't believe how she moved through the field. It's like she saw everything before it happened." Another added, "I've never trained with anyone like her. She's incredible." Remained composed, letting the respect and admiration wash over her without arrogance. She knew her performance had done more than prove her capabilities. It had set a standard for everyone who would follow. Continued, now addressing the unit. "Take note of how Sergeant Carter moved today. That is the level of skill, focus, and leadership we should all aspire to. She turned a chaotic scenario into a controlled operation, demonstrating initiative, intelligence, and courage. Let her performance today be a benchmark for all of us." The words carried authority, and even the most skeptical soldiers nodded in agreement. Had transformed the perception of what it meant to be a soldier in this unit, commanding respect not through rank alone, but through demonstrated excellence. His mind briefly reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. The morning's ridicule, the whispered doubts, the assumptions of incompetence, all had been transformed into fuel for determination. Each insult had sharpened her focus, every doubt had strengthened her resolve. Today, she had proven not only to her commander and peers, but to herself that skill, intelligence, and perseverance could overcome mockery and expectation. The unit gradually regrouped, soldiers offering congratulations in quieter, more personal ways. Accepted each with humility, knowing that leadership was as much about inspiring confidence as it was about personal accomplishment. The simulation had tested every aspect of her training, her instincts, and her courage. She had not only met the challenge but exceeded it, leaving an indelible impression on everyone who had witnessed her performance. Approached one final time, his demeanor softened. "Carter, I misjudged you today," he admitted, his tone carrying a mix of humility and acknowledgement. "You've earned not just respect but the admiration of this entire unit. Your performance will be remembered and studied. Today, you've set a new standard for what it means to be a soldier." Gave a simple nod, her expression composed yet proud. Validation from him, though not necessary, was now a confirmation of her mastery. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the training yard, allowed herself a moment to breathe fully. Her body was fatigued, her muscles sore, but her mind was clear. The simulation had ended, but the lessons it conveyed, about skill, courage, determination, and leadership, would resonate far beyond the field. She had turned ridicule into triumph, doubt into respect, and uncertainty into undeniable authority. Carter had been mocked at the start of the day, underestimated by her commander, and doubted by her peers. By the end, she had become a symbol of excellence, skill, and determination. She had proven that competence, courage, and intelligence could triumph over arrogance and expectation. The battlefield was quiet now, but the impact of her performance echoed in every corner of the unit. The recognition she received was not merely ceremonial, it was earned through action, precision, and courage. Transformation from the underdog to the deadliest soldier on the field was complete. Her peers no longer questioned her capabilities. Instead, they were inspired, driven to reach new heights themselves. And for Commander, the lesson was undeniable. Underestimate Sergeant Carter at your own peril. As the soldiers filed back toward the barracks, whispers of admiration and respect followed. She remained calm, composed, and focused, fully aware that today's performance had not only earned her recognition, but had redefined her place within the unit. Carter, once doubted and mocked, now stood as the embodiment of excellence, skill, and leadership. The sun dipped low over the training grounds, painting the sky in warm gold and crimson hues. Carter stood quietly, surveying the field where the simulation had unfolded, her body still buzzing from exertion but her mind at peace. Around her, soldiers packed up equipment, sharing quiet conversations and reflective smiles. The chaos, the tension, the relentless testing, all had ended, leaving a profound silence filled with respect, admiration, and a subtle sense of awe. Today had not been just another training exercise. It had been a turning point, a day that would be remembered long after the dust had settled. Allowed herself a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the evening sun on her face. She thought back to the morning, to the mockery from Commander, to the whispered doubts and dismissive glances of her peers. Each slight had once been a shadow that threatened to undermine her confidence. Yet, rather than faltering, she had harnessed that energy, turning doubt into fuel and ridicule into resolve. Today, she had not only proven herself but had transformed the perceptions of everyone around her. The soldiers began to gather near the central courtyard, their faces lit with admiration and newfound respect. Specialist approached again, his eyes bright with excitement. "I don't even know what to say," he said. "You didn't just clear the simulation, you changed the way we all see what's possible. I've trained with many soldiers, but I've never seen anyone move, think, and lead the way you did today." Gave him a faint smile, appreciating his words but remaining humble. Leadership, she knew, was as much about inspiring others as it was about personal achievement. Commander descended from the observation tower, his expression a mixture of reflection and respect. Gone was the mocking smirk of the morning, replaced by a subdued acknowledgement of her skill. "Sergeant Carter," he said, voice steady but carrying weight, "I've underestimated you all day. I believe this exercise would challenge you, perhaps even expose your weaknesses, but you've exceeded every expectation. You've proven skill, strategy, and courage that sets a new benchmark for this unit." Met his gaze, steady and calm. Validation from him, though not necessary, felt like a quiet closure, a moment where past doubts dissolved into acknowledgement. The soldiers around her began to speak, voices mingling in admiration. Some described her movements with awe, others whispered about her timing and decision-making, and a few admitted they had never seen such a combination of calm, precision, and leadership. Remained composed, letting the respect wash over her without pride or arrogance. She knew her actions had left an impression, not just because of her skill, but because of the courage to remain steadfast when others faltered. Later, as the unit regrouped and prepared to leave the training grounds, stood slightly apart, reflecting on the journey that had led to this moment. The early morning mockery, the disbelief, the constant pressure, all had been transformed into fuel for her determination. Every calculation, every step, every precise movement had carried her closer to the undeniable truth. She was not only capable but extraordinary. The battlefield had been her proving ground, and she had emerged victorious. Approached her one final time, his expression softened. "Sergeant Carter," he began, "what you've done today will be remembered, not just as a display of skill but as a lesson in leadership, courage, and resilience. You've shown everyone here what it truly means to be a soldier." Nodded quietly, her expression thoughtful. Words were unnecessary. Her performance had already spoken volumes, leaving a legacy that would influence her peers and the unit for years to come. The soldiers began sharing stories from the simulation, recounting moments when had anticipated threats, neutralized obstacles, and inspired confidence through her actions. Laughter and admiration filled the air as they discussed the efficiency and courage she displayed. It was clear that the story of the day's events would be retold countless times, her legacy growing with every retelling. Listened, a subtle smile on her lips, understanding the profound impact she had made not just on the exercise but on the people around her. As the evening deepened, took a final walk across the training field. Each footprint, each disturbed patch of earth, was a reminder of the challenges she had faced and overcome. The once-mocked soldier had become the embodiment of skill, courage, and perseverance. She thought about the soldiers she had inspired, the respect she had earned, and the lessons she had imparted through action rather than words. Her presence had transformed not only the simulation but the unit itself. Later that night, as returned to the barracks, the weight of the day began to settle in. The adrenaline faded, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. She knew that today's victory was not just about proving herself to others. It was about proving to herself that determination, intelligence, and courage could overcome doubt, mockery, and expectation. She had faced every obstacle with precision, executed every maneuver flawlessly, and emerged not only victorious but revered. In the days and weeks that followed, her performance continued to resonate. Soldiers spoke of her skill, her calm under pressure, and the leadership she displayed in moments of chaos. Commander, once her critic, now referenced her actions as a standard for training, a benchmark for excellence. Carter's transformation from the doubted underdog to the deadliest soldier on the field became an enduring story of inspiration, courage, and mastery. Herself reflected quietly on the journey. The battlefield had tested every aspect of her skill, every ounce of her determination, and every moment of her courage. She had turned mockery into motivation, doubt into achievement, and pressure into performance. Her legacy was not simply about the outcome of a simulation, but about the way she had inspired others to believe in the power of skill, strategy, and unwavering resolve. As she lay in her bunk that night, thought of the day's lessons. She had proven that excellence could overcome skepticism, and courage could redefine perception. She had shown that leadership was earned through action, not words, and that true mastery was both a personal achievement and an inspiration to others. The echoes of the day, the respect, the admiration, the recognition, would remain long after the training field was empty, a lasting testament to the soldier she had become. Carter had begun the day as the soldier who had been doubted and mocked. She ended it as the deadliest, most respected, and most inspiring member of her unit. Her legacy was secure, not because of accolades or praise, but because she had transformed every challenge into an opportunity, every insult into fuel, and every moment of pressure into a demonstration of excellence. The battlefield had witnessed her triumph, and in doing so, had ensured that her story would be remembered for years to come.